Well, great. I'm going to go ahead and bring everyone in. Let's switch over to the giant thing here so we can get everyone in here. So everyone, welcome. There's a lot of guests that we have, so
a lot.
We're going to try to not talk over each other, but we do have a surprise for you as well. So here we go. Let's get everyone in here. We have Jordan Yule, internet guy Jordan Yule. Let's see
Jordan,
here.
there's
Jordan.
There's
Hello.
Jordan.
Hi.
Hey, there's Jordan. Okay, I'm getting as many people in here as possible. All right, let's see. Here we go. Next up, joining us, we have Giorgio Angelini, who is the producer of the film. Let's go. Sorry, I'm
Good. Giorgio in here.
I think I'm clicking I'm trying to click everyone's names correctly.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hello.
Giorgio.
Hey.
Hello, Giorgio.
Hey, Giorgio. How's it going? Good. We loved the movie. We'll get to it in a second. We're getting everyone in here.
It's very dramatic. I love it. One by one.
I believe this is Arthur.
Like a real screening.
Yeah, I know.
They're clapping. Everyone watching this is clapping every time we introduce someone.
It's great.
We got someone new connecting who introduced our next guest.
Oh, this was a small minor figure in the film you might recognize.
Okay. Oops. Hold on. Trying to get this all in here at the same time. And here we go. There we go. Everyone should be
Arthur Jones
brought in. There's Arthur.
Hey, Elliot.
Hello.
Hello. Arthur was the director of the film.
We were just saying everyone loved it. Look at all those claps in the chat. I don't know if you guys have the YouTube chat open.
Everyone's clapping.
It is all clap emotes.
And there is Matt Furie down there.
Oh my
I'm
God.
gonna try to shrink this a bit so we can get everyone in here.
Oh, an LAFC fan.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Awesome. Let me trying to like get through
that chat was really moving to see everyone just explode at the end. It was really
one of the most emotional movies I've seen in a while, and it's all real. It was just like I was watching the chat too, kind of react to it, and I was like going through the motions like everyone else, where it was people were like happy, then sad, then frustrated, angry, sympathetic. Like it was just up and down, like the same path that Pepe kind of took.
Yeah, I was just saying before you guys came on, I mean, this is kind of like the perfect audience for this movie because this is all kind of adjacent to stuff we've been talking about on our channel for the last like 6-7 years. And yeah, this movie to me, it feels like almost a history of just not necessarily mainstream, but like online American culture over the past like half decade, but told through the lens of Pepe specifically, but it touches on just so many other aspects of like sort of how we got where we are today. Mm-hmm. It's a wild ride.
Thanks. That was dope.
that was our intention. Every day we kind of are amazed that we pulled it off. There's so many different kind of threads that we were pulling on while we were making the film. So
how did you guys get connected? Like, what was it that obviously the story behind Pepe and the ride that he went on is obviously very interesting, but who contacted who, and what was the process like getting this movie made so the world could see what actually happened?
Fury, you want to take that one?
Yeah, Arthur and I met on a hike, as the legend goes, and we're talking about cartoons and frogs and stuff like that. We wanted to make a cartoon, but then I was just like, I don't want to do my heart just wasn't in it. There's too much baggage with Pepe. And then Arthur's like, well, can I make a documentary? I was like, okay, I could be in a movie and I don't have to do much. So okay, yeah, sure. So
I will say, Matt, the hike that Matt and I took, it was an overnight to a hot springs, and he says, as legend has it, I will say, it was like a 12-mile hike to the hot springs. Then we slept near the hot springs and then hiked back. And while we were in the hot springs, our friend Jim Brown was sitting in the hot springs and he felt something underneath him and he pulled it out and it was a ring. It was a ring.
Yeah.
And so we had our little Lord of the Ring moment in the beginning. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't think you were in hot tub for that part of it. No, there was an epic quality to that weekend for sure.
I guess, I mean, like my biggest question, especially now that we've got Matt here, is, you know, was this, obviously this must have been cathartic to some degree, but like, I mean, do you feel better about this situation after going through not only what you've gone through for the past decade, but going through the production and release of this documentary? Has it changed your outlook on the Pepe situation more than what was already going on?
Yeah, I think it helped me. Actually, I was kind of in denial about a lot of the Pepe stuff. Like, I just didn't really focus on a lot of the negativity and stuff. And so it actually took me a while to process it. I remember at Sundance, I was like kind of shaking down Arthur a bit, just saying like, you made me look like an emotional wuss or something. I was having some like psychological problems with it, but I think it was my own problems. And now that I'm, you know, that the movie's been out for a long time, I'm able to like kind of have some distance from it. And, you know, it did help me kind of figure it out in a good way. And I think it's a good film, but it is still challenging for me because of just like, it just like unlocks some maybe emotions that I try to suppress when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's heavy, man.
Well,
but it's ultimately been a good thing. And you know, I just texted Giorgio. I'm like, I want to talk to you guys because I know you did the screening tonight. A lot of people were watching, and I believe in the power of love, and I also like attention, and I like to steal the attention from these filmmakers. So I like to pop in and be like, telling it how it is from my perspective. You know what I mean?
The truth is too, it's such a bonding experience to spend so much intimate time with someone holding a camera in front of their face that you do start to miss them, especially in COVID.
A line that Matt said in the movie that I think got the most traction in our live chat was when you corrected Alex Jones's lawyer and you said, "Do you mean Mayor McCheese?" Got a lot of cheers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah, check it out. I found this tray the other day at a flea market.
Oh, wow.
It's Mayor McCheese. This is an original tray. You can put your soda there and have your hamburger and fries there.
wow.
That's
Pretty
awesome.
$10. I got that for $10.
Priceless though.
Yeah, I remember I went and got a at a like an antique store or whatever. I found McDonald's used to do like they had the cups from the Flintstones movie, and I had those when I was a kid, so I like rebought them. So I love like finding those things that you had when you were young and getting to hold them once again.
Yeah, there's magic to it.
We were talking about earlier before the film even started of kind of the way that Pepe has evolved post alt-right and Trump and everything, and how it's become seemingly online now. It's more of a reaction type thing. You have of course Twitch and Discord and YouTube and of course Twitter, but there's I feel like more often than not, you're seeing Pepe as a reaction kind of appearance rather than how it's been perceived over the past 5 years or so, almost going back to its original roots after you lost control of it. But so what do you think about maybe like how he's evolved since the filming of the documentary?
Well, I hear a lot of the information from Giorgio, actually. He lets me know what's happening in the world of Pepe, and there's a lot happening. So it's interesting. It just keeps evolving, and this thing won't end. It just keeps going. So I don't know. I think it's cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
The funniest, like I think the best part, or at least the one that you should, I guess, feel good about, all things considered, since the internet is never going to let go of your creation, is that most of the ones that I see as far as creations for people's Twitch streams and stuff like that, and Discord and on Twitter, is they all seem to be generally happy and good spirited. Like one of the my favorite ones that I see all the time, and people like Hassan's stream, he's a huge streamer on Twitch, is like the Pepe hands, where it's just a happy Pepe clapping. And like I think that is probably the most popular one that I've seen recently. So from the being online and on the internet constantly, I do have to say that I feel like the more positive ones are rising to the top, at least in the past 2 or so years. So things are going a lot better now for Pepe as far as I've seen.
Oh yeah.
But Giorgio and Arthur, what were some of the, like, I guess the challenges of getting this made? Because, you know, it is, you know, it's a image that is obviously super popular, that a lot of people didn't know the backstory behind or weren't like following it as closely. Did you think initially that people would be interested in this kind of documentary, or was it kind of just a passion project?
It was both. I mean, we understood that Pepe was like a once in a lifetime leading frog man for a film. Like, you know, we understood, like, the media loved sort of turning over Pepe in the way that they described the character. You know, mutual friends of like Matt and ours, like all the comic book people that I knew, everyone was like, what is going on with Pepe? It was something that everyone had an opinion about. Everyone had come up to kind of like, they'd come up with their own theories about what exactly had happened and why it had happened, or why Pepe. And there was also a part of me as someone who, you know, I come to documentary, this is like my second career. I was working as like an illustrator and a graphic designer for years beforehand. And so there was a part of me that was just excited to make a film about the potency of cartoon characters. People don't really think about cartoons with any sort of critical perspective. And this was a chance to really talk about how, you know, Pepe is this incredibly flexible signifier for this new language that we're all sort of now part of. Like, social media has changed the way we talk to everybody on the planet. And so even though it's the silly, like, it's the silly stoned cartoon frog image, but you can talk about so much other stuff that was going on with it. And Giorgio was a friend of mine. He'd had me work on his debut film, which is named Owned, A Tale of Two Americas, which is about housing policy in America and redlining. And we just become friends, and we had a lot of like deep philosophical talks about like politics and art. And he was coming to film as a second career too, after being a musician and an architect. And I think we were just kind of like, we saw that in Feels Good Man, we could explore all of the stuff that we were excited about in culture. And then we could also tackle a lot of the stuff that we were disturbed by that was going on in 2016 and 2017.
Yeah, I mean, the struggle at the beginning wasn't, everyone always wanted to take a meeting with us, right? As two essentially first-time filmmakers. Like, people understood the interest in the story and the novelty of using Pepe to tell the story, and obviously Matt being gracious enough to give us access into his life. But there was always like this reluctance to fund the project or support the project, because they were like, well, this is like some really potentially dicey subject matter, and we don't know how you guys are going to treat it. And it's like totally understandable, especially because we didn't have much laurels to stand on. But that was something that really traced the entire project, and we'd always have to like reprove ourselves. So Arthur and I basically spent the first year making this on our own, and we had to make the first half of the film and enlist the help of Arthur's pal, now my pal, I guess, Aaron Wickenden, who was our senior editor. Mm-hmm. He's like a, you know, doc editing Jedi, and he was kind enough to lend his skills to give us like a first rough cut that we were able to raise some funding to finish the film. But then releasing the film became a similar problem. You know, yeah. It's like we were really lucky and got into Sundance. Very much to our surprise, won an award. And then, like, you know, the truth is, especially as like streaming has consolidated the market, monopolized everything, you know, you don't want to potentially piss off all of your subscribers. And like the possibility of doing that with this film seemed to them, even after seeing it and understanding what we made, to be kind of a potential that a lot of people didn't want to risk. And so it put us in a situation where we had to self-release it, which was an incredible experience. But it's to say, like, all of this has definitely been a labor of love.
Yeah.
You mentioned the
like
editing.
Matt, we've discovered the blessing and the curse of Pepe the same way that Matt.
That's it. If you want to donate,
Yes.
if you want to donate to us, it's feelsgoodmanfilm at gmail.com on PayPal.
Hell yeah.
Here you go. Feels good man film at Feels good man film at Gmail.
Yeah, on PayPal. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're still in the red. So
Okay, everyone go PayPal this.
I'm curious if I could kind of get your thoughts on, you kind of touched on it at the end, but I didn't get too far into it. The guy at the ADL suggested that your premise and your approach to this whole thing was misguided, that taking it off the list wasn't really helpful in the long run. I'm curious, like, how do you feel about that? And also what the next steps are, because I think that I'm obviously not speaking for you, and I don't think that my comment should speak for the filmmakers or Matt, but I think there's a little bit of overzealousness with some of this, and that led to really bold claims on cable news and really like a huge conflation of the origin and the meaning and the symbolism behind it that obviously we just talked about in the film. But what's next, and how do you feel about this just blunt dismissal that taking it off the list isn't going to help in the long run?
that's a question for Matt.
Well, as you guys mentioned earlier, like Pepe is kind of bigger than the political thing. And, what I've come to realize through becoming kind of a pawn in the whole political game or whatever, that, the powers that be do have a control of the narrative. They are able to say things and then back them up with institutions. And then it does weave itself into the cultural narrative in ways that I couldn't have done, or you couldn't have done, or the general public couldn't have done. But there is a power to it, and so I think that Pepe is actually what we've seen is it's bigger than all that. It resonates with people, as you mentioned, in other ways that are outside of this kind of. It's kind of like a hyper-focused kind of narrative that was a product of that election, and now that election is over, and Pepe and me have become kind of this kind of collateral damage to a game that was bigger than me, but I persevere.
You mentioned the editing and the amount of work that went into that, and it really shows. I mean, you guys cover a lot of sort of peripheral aspects of this story, and I'm anytime I see a documentary like this, I'm always wondering, like, what kind of threads didn't make it into the film or didn't get as fully explored as maybe you had filmed or wish you had filmed. Was there anything like that would have ended up in the Snyder cut of
the Pepe cut?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. We really, we spent 2.5 years making the film, and there's some stuff that we edited that ended up on the Blu-ray. There was this amazing scene that was shot in St. Petersburg, Russia, not Florida, that is like a little aside that was going to be there was like this whole like little section in the film near the cryptocurrency section where it was almost, we were going to like spin the globe and visit these different places where Pepe had been used in a variety of ways. And so, so we had this scene in Russia that was an awesome scene, but we just decided we needed the film to be 90 minutes long, and it kind of stole from Matt's story a little bit. And then there was like we spent a lot of time with Pizza and Mills. And so, there was a variety of different threads to their story that as Matt continued to basically enact his copyright, that ended up becoming like the predominant narrative in the film. When we started making the film, you know, Matt hadn't really he'd done a couple sort of things with in collaboration with his lawyers, but that really became the thrust of the film. And then Aaron, our editor, came up with a few different kind of sayings that ended up kind of guiding the edit. One of which was like, he would constantly tell Giorgio and I to follow the thin green line. Whenever we would sort of start to like spin too far out of control, or we would like go down a cul-de-sac for too far, he would always be like, come back to Pepe. But Pepe is this amazing character where you can just basically type in Pepe plus any emotion, Pepe plus, you know, any current event, and you will find source material for it. It's this kind of incredible storytelling tool. And so, yeah, that was, I don't know. Yeah, it was something that we spent about a year wandering around trying to figure out exactly how to do it. But then when it kind of came into focus, I think it felt really good. It was something that I were like, oh, this is clicking and it's making us feel something.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that emotion was ultimately the thing that we had to follow to make this story comprehensible. Getting stuck in all the sort of like internet soap opera part of it wasn't going to ultimately be effective to the audience. What was going to be effective is what Pepe means to people, and how Matt's journey can kind of teach us about how the internet steals our emotions and commodifies them and twists them. And so, yeah, that was kind of, I think, the main epiphany in the edit, is this small story actually allows us to tell a much bigger story.
I wanted to pitch pitch it over to Jordan, who, you know, has worked behind the scenes, you know, with Move On and Media Matters and stuff, and you know, talk about maybe your experience in the online space during the time of Pepe being used by the alt-right, and if you had any questions for Matt regarding your experience kind of wading through the waters on the internet during this like extremely strange time period.
Sure. I remember like very early on, a bunch of my buddies were pretty quick on the alt-right beat, and asking them pretty early, like, what's up with all the frogs? Because I mean, I'd seen it on Instagram for years and thought it was fine. And they just said, oh yeah, they just got co-opted by like 4chan. I'm like, okay. And that was it. And then just seeing like the people who study it and were younger and also grew up on the internet and had a familiarity with it, to this other path of like MSNBC hosts and kind of like shrieking like columnists and political operatives just try to use this to scare people, I felt was pretty insidious. But I mean, I kind of articulated earlier, I don't agree with the ADL's positioning. And I think that anything you can do to kind of distance yourself from that is good. I think it's just ultimately in their best interest to have as much on there, because I think people, like Matt said, it's like cannon fodder in this like this bigger war. The more people remain scared, the more people remain fearful of these different types of things or upset, it's cannon fodder for them. I don't know. I guess what's next for you in general? This is, I certainly, like you say, it's not going away, and I'm just really curious, like how you see this fight going on. I don't know. I'm just really, really curious about how you handle this from here.
Well, you know, like I said earlier, you just gotta keep going. You know, I think I've been able to glean some resilience from this, and just you know, when we were making the movie and stuff, I'm more than just Pepe, and my creative output is more than just Pepe. So, you know, I spend my days drawing other things, and, you know, I'm into, you know, all kinds of different critters, mm-hmm. you know, like elephant seals and Chinese dragons and monkeys, you know, 7-headed, you know, European dragons. There's all kinds of stuff to focus on. Outside of this one dumbass fucking frog that everybody loves. God bless you. But there's other stuff too, you know.
I will say,
you know, there's a whole world of amazing things out there.
The same day the movie came out, yeah, This is the coffee table book that Matt put out the same time we put out the film. It's called Mind Viscosity.
Is that on the website that we just broke by linking it?
No, actually, that's on Fantagraphics Books website. You can break their website.
Okay. Yeah. What's the title of the book again, so I can put it in the chat so everyone can Google it?
It's called Mind Viscosity. But this was all the stuff that Matt was drawing while we were making the film and before.
Yeah, like
there's some good highlights here. There's a couple Pepes, but it's mostly. Here's a good one.
like it's move to your right.
Move to my right.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
There we go.
And then everyone also is asking in chat how they can. We've already linked the feelsgoodmanfilm.com. Matt, do you have a web store where people can buy things directly from you currently up?
Yep.
I don't. In fact, my web store is currently down, but I on my website, mattfurie.com, my web store links to the Feels Good Man merch store.
Oh, okay.
Now, so
There we go.
He does have a Patreon. He does have a
you get stuff
Patreon.
like this.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
I do have a Patreon, but Giorgio just sent me a little royalty payment the other day. Thank you, Giorgio. So I'm getting paid for that stuff.
Nice.
No, but to Jordan's comment though, I mean, like about the ADL, I mean, Feels Good Man is, if anything, it's just like a piece of media literacy, like the speed at which our internet irrealities and our tangible realities have like flattened into this weird amorphous pseudo reality that happened over the course of like a very short amount of time. And certainly for the older people, you know, obviously like QAnon and the storming of the Capitol are perfect examples of this, but like people are having a really hard time discerning not just fact from fiction, but like understanding how to engage responsibly in this world. And I think the ADL, you know, we can never know what their true intention was there, if it was just like some, you know, political calculating within the Hillary Clinton campaign. I think they mean well, but I think they were not prepared in understanding really like how trolling works, like at a base level. And but all the same, like, yeah, I don't know, at least for my part, I just wish they would have a different classification rather than a hate symbol. It should just be like an internet glossary of like, if you've seen this, like it's a nuanced thing and check it out. And you know, that is the only copywritten image on there. It's like, I think Johnny Ryan was like, yeah, you know, Mickey Mouse used to be like, you know, a Nazi symbol too. Like, see what happens if you put Mickey Mouse on the ADL's hate symbol database.
Yeah. We did have some viewer questions. One that was actually
Great.
We kind of experienced it in the chat it's around the beginning of the middle part of the film where it really dives into just how extreme Pepe was taken. And there's a big part of the film that, you know, covers all of the alt-right appropriation and, you know, that next, like, pushing the level so that people couldn't share the memes, trying to go as extreme as possible, and how that was radicalizing people. And we even had people in the chat who maybe didn't join at the beginning of the film and understand what the entire film was about. We had people wondering, like, hey, why are you showing this? This is going to radicalize people. And did you have any, this is from a username Ardent Drub, did you have any concerns about further exposing any fringe viewers or introducing new viewers to the alt-right movement through the film or through Pepe?
You know, that was something that we talked a lot about in the edit. And so, you know, specifically after Charlottesville, there were some ways that members of the quote unquote alt-right were being portrayed in the media that we as filmmakers did feel was irresponsible. Mm-hmm. You know, after Charlottesville, there were a number of stories, and I guess before Charlottesville too, there were a number of stories with like big glossy fashion spreads of Richard Spencer. He was almost treated like a model for a moment. Him and Milo Yiannopoulos were like the provocateurs of the movement. And in Feels Good Man, what we wanted to do was sort of show the people that those provocateurs were seeking to exploit through their message. And so we felt that it was actually really important not to shy away from that stuff, because one, it gave the film like a sense of authenticity that we thought that it absolutely needed. This film, and we couldn't show everything. Like Pepe got even darker and weirder than that for sure. But we felt like we had to show exactly why the ADL did what they did. And then also, this was the stuff that was really floating around in 2015 and 2016, and most of America was oblivious to it. And it was important that it was seen. And so, we were very judicious in what we used, but ultimately, I think if someone watches the entire film and takes it at face value, we're not really worried about it radicalizing anybody. If anything, any kid that grew up during this time period and was participating in game chat rooms or anything encountered all of this stuff anyway. Like the genie is out of the bottle. This conversation is ongoing. And so we think that if you really take a good faith look at the film and understand where we're coming from, and it's obvious where we as filmmakers are coming from with it, I think it's important for every documentary filmmaker to have a point of view in what they're doing and what they're saying.
But also just to look at the way that, for example, Mills is kind of, I guess, the main figure that maybe the commenter was responding to. Like, he was someone that was really indicative of, like Arthur said, this group that was being exploited by the kind of professional racist class of InfoWars and Richard Spencer. And all the same, though, we were really careful to make sure that, at least from our perspective, that the audience could understand where Mills sat with us within our story. Like, that he was a like an unreliable narrator of sorts, and it was important for us to show him authentically in his life, but also what he was sacrificing in his own life by being completely tethered to this particular world, right? There's the way we introduce Mills is up in this otherwise like very Norman Rockwell kind of setting in a suburban house with his sweet mom chopping up celery for their lunch, and he descends down to the basement and just becomes this absolute monster. And it's like a awful kind of cycle that he talks about himself plainly, that he feels like he can't get out from under this sort of seduction of just producing garbage for an audience he doesn't really know, but who values that shit. And that seemed to be for us to be like really important for people to see and feel, because to otherize or caricaturize someone like Mills is also to say like, oh, this is like a isolated problem, or I don't have to worry about it. It's like, this shit's happening in basements everywhere.
Yeah. And just to add to that, like there's been a number of films about 4chan, and it'll just kind of like cut to someone in like the New York Times like newsroom talking about 4chan in kind of a pejorative way or something. And we really wanted to understand why people cared about Pepe so much. And the reason they cared about it is because Pepe was their stand-in. Pepe was them, on these message boards to a certain degree. But, I also just have to say, like, we were able to do a couple film festivals before the shutdown. And after a film festival, I had a conversation with an audience member, and she was someone who was in her early 20s, and she maybe had the same criticism that the commenter had. And she was like, yeah, you just show this guy and he's like kicking around trash in his room and he thinks that's cool. And I was like, well, this film may not be for you. I don't think art has to please everybody all the time. Like, I think you end up making something that's a little bit devoid of substance if you're worried about making anyone mad. And so, that was something that we were aware of and we were conscious of in the edit. But I don't think anyone got radicalized by Feels Good, Man.
Well, another very interesting character that I think our audience latched onto quite a bit was the occultist fellow, the meme magic guy. So what's the story like about sort of why you sought out a occultist and how you found him, and what is that guy's deal exactly? He was fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, meme magic is something that people talk about on 4chan all the time. So it was something that really was gaining a lot of traction in 2016. And so there was always this note card on our edit bulletin board where we had all of the story broken down that said meme magic ? And we were like, how are we going to tackle this? And then Giorgio, someone emailed Giorgio with a little tip, and I'll let Giorgio take it from there.
Yeah. No, I was doing a podcast for the last film we had made, Owned, and at the end of the interview, they ask you, what are you up to next? And at that point, we were kind of trying to be low key about it, but I mentioned a film about Pepe broadly, and this guy,
which I was kind of bummed
pretty
that
pissed.
he did, but it turned out to be like it led to a really good thing.
Yeah. So this guy, this person of the audience just introduced us to him. And we started listening to his podcast and reading his writing. And you Google him, the first image that comes up is him. He was for a long time a literal arch druid. I mean, I think he still considers himself a druid, but he was like, the head druid.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like,
so in pictures, he was wearing ceremonial garb.
Exactly. Yeah. Like he's kind of, he is the physical manifestation of our film in a sense. Like at first you kind of snicker and giggle at him, but then you kind of lean in because as he starts talking, you're like, oh shit, this guy's incredibly well researched, really speaks well, is super authentic, and just a delightful, lovely person, and really serious about what he's talking about. And so he lives in Providence, and Arthur happened to go to Rhode Island School of Design. And so when we were trying to think about where to film with him, Arthur had spent time obviously there in the city and was aware of this really beautiful old library where apparently Edgar Allan Poe wrote his last poems before he went, mad from drinking formaldehyde or whatever. But we were trying to schedule the shoot with him, and we're like, we're also scheduling a bunch of other shoots around him. Like, hey, so we got the place in the morning from like 9 a.m. to noon before they open, and that's the cheapest time. And he's like, oh, actually, I'm a nocturnal person, so I don't wake up until 5 p.m. Like, oh shit. But it ended up being like the best thing possible because the scene and everything about it was just perfect.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where I think, like sometimes when you're a documentary filmmaker, you get stuck in a situation where you go into an interview with the best intentions, you spend an hour setting up the light, you're getting everything perfect, and then 3 minutes into the interview, you realize you'll never use it. And that's not always on the person you're interviewing. Maybe it's just a bad match for subject matter. Maybe they're nervous. Maybe you're having a bad day. Something's off. But this one, you're just like, oh, this is very good. Usually we interview people for a very long period of time. Like Matt can attest, like that first interview was like 6 hours. It's long. It's hard to sit for that period of time. And John, it was like a 30 to 40 minute interview, like very quick. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is we constantly tried to kind of subvert people's preconceived notions of this story. And just imagining John Michael Greer sitting on 4chan all of a sudden is another thing where you're like, what is up with this story? Like, it really makes you kind of consider this other aspect of it that feels much deeper than the soap opera that was going on in 2016, even though John speaks directly to the soap opera in a very engaging way. But yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's someone who makes a living off of his blog. So if you're into John Michael Greer, Google him, donate something to his PayPal. He's written over 40 books on magic. Buy one of his books. He's a lovely guy who's done a lot of great work in his life and has gone kind of unheralded. So yeah.
I have a question about kind of I want to get Matt's reaction, but also some insight from Arthur and Giorgio about what I can only assume is the very unforgiving task of looking up thousands upon thousands of extremist variations of this character, and what the kind of effect that had on you and how in-depth and lengthy the process was. And specifically for Matt, now, like obviously from the outside looking in, you were aware of everything that was happening to your creation, but just how in-depth did you go as the creator looking into how your creation was being altered? And were you aware of just the depth and the sheer amount of different versions of this character had gone through, and were you actively keeping tabs on it? Were you were you just trying to ignore it, but you understood what was happening? What was that whole process like during, 2014 to 2016, 17? Like,
I mean, I agree with that part in the movie where, it kind of Pepe went mainstream, and then a lot of people were using it, particularly women or normies or whatever were starting to use it. So then I was kind of paying attention to the backlash and seeing like the pee pee poo poo Pepe. There's like a lot of very scatological. There would be like Pepe had just gotten done like raping somebody, and then there was like poop smeared all over the walls. So there's just like some really extreme, really crudely drawn stuff out there. And I come from an art background where I don't necessarily that's not my cup of tea, but
Yeah.
I could see why people, I could see the trajectory of doing the most extreme stuff. And then of course, if you're playing that game, it's going to lead to being extremely racist or homophobic or anti-Jew and stuff like that. And so I saw it happening. I guess, what I think really solidified the hate symbol thing was the trappings of the political thing and the power narrative happening there. And it just got, there really wasn't much I could have done about it, because it's just like, it's just a mob of insanity versus me.
I mean, what was Matt going to do? Like email every person on 4chan? Like,
exactly.
What would Matt do? Like,
there's of course no recourse for it. It's just like that's what's like I find like kind of putting myself into your shoes. I would just feel hopeless, but I would maybe like ignore what was going on. I just didn't know how, if you were constantly like overwhelmed by it, or if you just learned to kind of, it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do. So like that kind of reaction.
My whole thing, I know that you guys, not to pass judgment or whatever, but like there's a spectrum of degrees to how much time people spend online. And I think during those times, like I go online, I like check my email, and maybe I look up some shit, but I don't do that much on there. I'm like more into hanging out with my daughter, making sure, dinner is made, going for a walk, doing my art projects. There's a whole thing that's going on beyond all of this insanity. And so I'm just like, I've always really valued just actual real life experience and interacting with friends and family and animals and plants and stuff like that. So there's a whole world out there outside of this thing that I was more involved with. I could see like getting kind of captivated by it and stuck in it, and then wanting to like control it or something. But it's almost like a drug. It's like trying to control an addiction or something. It's really better to just wean yourself from the thing altogether and focus on what you do have, which is a beautiful family and a creative life and warm weather, and you can take your shoes off and put your feet in the sand.
Speaking of family, so your daughter was pretty young during the filming of this, but it's been a few years. Like, has it gotten to a point where you have to kind of explain? Has she asked about any of this? Like, how much of this aspect of your life is she aware of?
She lives a pretty sheltered life, actually. In a good way. We just chill, and she's into dragons. So, she knows about Pepe and stuff. She's not into Pepe. She's just like, yeah, it's Pepe, but she's much more into elemental dragons. She's got your earth dragons, the fire dragons, the water dragons. We were playing building castles, and also I have a marble run too. So we were racing marbles earlier today and stuff. So, I don't, she's in kindergarten. She knows a little bit about the Pepe thing, but it's really
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You know, she's in her own world of wonder right now. And actually, she's an inspiration for me. But her art, she's become a really great artist, and just the way her mind works and how just like how
She's an
present
incredible
she is,
storyteller.
and you know, it's just it's a kid thing, right? So like you can kind of tap into that childhood wonder, and that's always been a source of creativity for me. And even when making Pepe and stuff like that, you know, I've always been into drawing frogs, and I've always had, you know, aunts, you know, specifically my Aunt Elaine gave me a frog necklace when I was little, and it was like a little talisman that I think had like some real power to it, and I've taken that with me, and I, you know, I still believe in the power of wonder, and you know, I think frogs are a good kind of metaphor for our connection with nature, or for a peaceful creature that just, you know, wants to swim and eat bugs and stuff.
I will say, like, being the subject of a documentary is like, it's an awkward thing, it's a time consuming thing. And for the most part, Matt was like a really amazing sport during all this. But, you know, there were a couple bumps in the road. And one of them was like, we were there filming and we were talking about all this stuff. And Matt was like, I don't want you talking about all this stuff in front of my daughter. Like, she was in the periphery. And, you know, I think that's something that, you know, that's Matt's main priority. And I think that's something that pretty much anyone can understand and be aware of, that while all of this stuff was going on in 2015, 2016, you know, he and Ayana were really focused on Ursula, not on what was going on with all this like mess.
So
go ahead, Jordan.
So in it near the end, and granted, this might have been a couple of years ago, Matt, you mentioned that this has affected your creative energy and your creative output. And I was wondering if that has changed, and what, if anything, has contributed to that improving.
I don't know. I think, you know, I do miss my days of just having, I think there's something about being younger and coming up in the world. And, you know, there's an energy there. There's a drive to be ambitious and to make a name for yourself and to work really hard. But really having a kid kind of throws a wrench into that. So I'm just chilling now, and I'm enjoying drawing with my daughter, and I'm lucky to be in a position now where I can just you know, work a little bit on my art, but also just be present for my family and stuff. So so I think I would have naturally slowed down anyways, even if I didn't have this fucking hate simple thing. Excuse my French,
No, it's okay.
minors in the
You
chat.
but you are working on some really cool large format pieces, though.
I am, yeah. I can show you what I'm working on now.
Yeah, let's see.
I didn't want to, you know.
There we go.
Don't be so humble. There's some really cool shit he's been working on. Really
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a new Matt Furie drop coming.
I've been trying
right
to
here on the
lead
stream.
towards like what's coming, and I finally got an answer.
Matt, what I really like about Matt's new work is it's
Well, see, I'm doing this
very
big
wet.
drawing, so this is going to take a long time. But so I'm
Wow.
just starting in the corner and then just drawing creatures.
You can see some elemental dragons in there.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Everything's really well shaded.
I'm just going to fill it up with creatures.
He has like a way of making things look really wet. That's like,
I like my drawings wet.
So I guess so for Giorgio and Arthur, and then I guess we'll finish with Matt's thoughts. But you know, now that the film's released and the story's out there, is there anything specific that you'd like people to know about this journey, and any kind of like parting words or anything for the audience who has just like watched this whole thing? Is there anything that you think that they should focus on or learn from it specifically that you were trying to get across?
I mean, for me, certainly, you know, it's part of the trick of how we really work so hard on the ending, is, you know, that line that Matt says about being hardcore happy, like really stuck with us. It was one of the earliest things that Aaron had cut when we started making the film, and it always just sat there kind of ringing in your head, but it always kind of changed meanings in a way. Sometimes it felt pithy and kind of, you know, shallow, but then it really started building this really deeply impactful notion for me and the rest and everyone else, really. But like, just the idea that the world that we're existing in right now being so dominated by online culture, like the online culture in the way that it's structured right now has a tendency to kind of shame you out of your empathy and authenticity and singularness, and it kind of flattens you into this cynical, angry thing, and the internet becomes a place where you're like either avoiding being bullied or doing the bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a horrible space to inhabit, especially if you're on it like all day long. And for me, the film is really just a reminder that that's like a choice, and you don't have to carry that into your real life. You can log off and like focus on the shit that matters, the interpersonal relationships, and like being present with your community, and like that you shouldn't feel like that's a cheesy thing to say out loud. I don't know. That's my message.
Arthur?
I mean, I think that's really well put. And I think we had a pretty unified front in what the film was trying to do. You know, at the ending of the film, we were very specific about not wanting the film to have like a dystopian feel. There's kind of like a trope that sci-fi films, and then also a lot of like issue-driven documentaries have, where it's just like hope is lost, and there's this like ominous music, and like there's just stuff that we felt as filmmakers, we saw that you know that this was a really unique chance to add some poetry into this conversation. And you know, I think what I can't really improve on what Giorgio said, but I will say, like, I was a conservative teenager. I think I'm someone who would have been on 4chan had it existed. And I was like, I grew up in a rural town in Missouri. I was frustrated. I was sexless. I was angry. I was obsessed that the world was probably against me in some way, that there wasn't sort of hope there for me in whatever way that I potentially envisioned it. You know, I think that it was like a slow unwinding process of me coming out of that. And I think me sort of unred pilling myself was something that you kind of have to sacrifice your pride in order to open yourself up emotionally to the world around you. And that was something that I did in my 20s. And I think that it was something that obviously has completely changed my entire life. And there was this other moment while we were making the film where I had to really kind of experience a kind of ego death to get this thing made too, and open myself up to collaboration and bringing in the best ideas from this like crazy group of artists that we had working on it. And I think that that was something that was also really life affirming. So I think that there was like something in the way that the film was made and the collaboration that we all had, and we were all doing it for the right reasons, that I really hope kind of just comes out through the film implicitly. And I really appreciate everybody watching. Like, you know, this making this movie and putting it out in the world, a lot of people always ask, like, were you afraid of getting trolled, all this sort of stuff? And yeah, that occurred to us, but the opposite has happened. In fact, it's been like an extremely positive, gracious, humbling experience taking the film out in the world, where we've had a lot of great conversations. And those were the things that have been really a wonderful and delightful surprise. And so I hope that people will just kind of see this film for what it is. And as we go forward, you know, Pepe will move into another phase where he is the symbol for love and kindness. And maybe he went through a dark moment, but he came out the other side, and we all can too.
Yeah. Matt, did you have any parting words for, I mean, anyone listening that you'd like to impart on them, is just like where your journey's going, what you feel about what's happened, and where you think the future goes for Pepe and the rest of your art?
Well,
oh, I think we lost you right before that. There we go. You're back.
I think actually Arthur gave me some really good advice. He's like, you know, I don't know, I was feeling particularly overwhelmed, or I forget what the context was, but he's just like, you know, you don't just ignore your emails, don't worry about stuff, just do what you want to do. And I do think that there's a real power to as Joseph Campbell would say, to follow your bliss, because that's kind of all I've tried to do my whole life. Like I've tried to just do what makes me happy. And even when I was at my most ambitious and my youngest and trying to make a name for myself as an artist, I still knew that I was young and I was in my 20s. And the most important thing of
Oh, then we lost him again. There you go.
living was to be aware with your friends and have fun and not trip about stuff is like that's the golden nugget of our civilization right now, is just having this free time to be able to express yourself and to hang out with your friends and to really just, just realize that life is good and it's a lot of fun and it's fleeting and it happens fast. And, so don't, if you're in a shitty job, know that you can just quit it. It doesn't matter. And do what you want to do. And just, there's plenty of food and stuff.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I mean, the documentary was incredible. This was my first time seeing it. Elliot had seen it and been talking about it for a while. And then when I got the message from Jordan about, being able to collaborate and show it on our channel, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to wait and react to it live and see how it goes. And I was blown away. It's a really good retelling of just the culture of the online space alongside the journey that this art has been on. So thank you for making it a great documentary, and I hope everyone watching really enjoyed it. We have Matt's Patreon linked on the pin right now. But it's feelsgoodmanfilm.com for the Blu-ray, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then feelsgoodmanfilm@gmail for the PayPal.
Yes,
Thank
so
you.
much.
We appreciate it.
No, you guys, Jordan, Ricky, Elliot, like this is so special, and like just seeing the chat. Honestly, it was like a very moving experience. This whole year putting out a film, we really believe in theatrical experience of watching films, and like that was something that was a real loss in being in shutdown. And like these kinds of moments have been really, really special. So we really appreciate you facilitating it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for letting us show it.
Sticking around. Yeah, our pleasure.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll put some links out on Twitter where people can get everything, because everyone's very interested in trying to support all of you guys as much as possible. So thank you guys.
Everyone clap. Everyone clap in the chat.
All right.
Can I just say one thing?
Sorry.
I've been watching the chat. It's really funny. Everybody in the chat, you guys are really funny, and I've been watching it the whole time. So, good job.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, guys.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Yep.